Yeah, no one's gonna be here because they're still at home.
Bro, that's ridiculous. Don't have to grab them, tranquilize them, smack them.
I don't care.
Good. They can stuff here.
That's fine. Titus, we basically talked about what we needed to talk about, so we'll just close it out. Oh. Maybe we can circle around and like talk about feelings.
I'm actually totally fine with that.
Also, you texted in your group chat that you've never tried French or Asian cuisine. Is that completely true? You've never tried like not even Panda Express.
Oh no! I've eaten plenty of Asian. I was just saying that like there's a stigma around France that it's like the center of culinary arts in the world.
Yes.
I don't understand that. Why? I've never even heard of a French restaurant anywhere.
It's just Eurocentric. There's some full Asian cuisines.
Kind of weird.
Still kind of weird, but. We go number 2. Like, where are we?
Like Japanese hibachi.
Huh?
I do like Japanese hibachi. Like it's so much better than Chinese food in my opinion.
The steakhouse.
How many times a week you cook? 2 or 3?
Maybe.
Get that.
On a good week, like 2 or 3 times.
You just be out or what?
Well, usually two days I get taken care of with bread night and Wednesday night. So if I cook like 2 or 3 times, I either have leftovers or something like that. Take care of me.
But when you don't cook at home, you don't have. Like, what do you just go out and get something?
Yeah, I just go to like. I don't even. Sometimes I'll do like Chinese or something like that. Sometimes I'll go out with somebody. Like Chase. It's a day-to-day kind of.
Just spare the moment.
Yeah. I really need to start meal prepping. Which Caden said. He'll pay me if I meal prep for him.
Caden Ross?
No, it's him. He's trying to shed some weight. So
He'll pay you?
he'll pay like Hillary will pay me. He said.
It's not that hard.
It isn't.
I tell you what, dieting, throwing money at a diet is not going to work.
No.
You got to be able to stick to it.
You definitely have to work.
I don't know section.
I mean, you can, like I paid $300 for a diet kit one time, and it lasted for 31 days, and then 31 days was up, out the window, back to eating.
Wait, I have another.
Yeah, honestly, diet's not the move. It's just
Sure is.
Tell you what's really bad for me is Shogun opened up back out where I live, out towards.
something's not good.
It's so bad for me.
Listen.
The sodium content
It is,
its intake is so bad.
but it's also just not that good food. You know, like, I'd rather.
Yeah, it's gone downhill.
I'd rather. Okay, all right.
Like 2 seconds. So cute. He's so cute.
Who is it?
My nephew.
Oh,
I saw him yesterday.
that's cute.
Listen, I bought him this outfit that said time for turkey and touchdowns or something. I had turkey with football in it. And he only wore it for like 3 hours, so I took it back to Target last night. After he wore it.
I mean,
It's
okay.
like $10.
Is this class recording?
Yes.
Okay, here's my confession.
All right, so yeah, as much as I would just like to
Oh.
catch up and whatnot, we do. We'll finish up real quick, okay, and we'll talk about our feelings. Okay, Titus chapter 3. So I mean, we have really talked about the meat of Titus in the last 2 chapters. Titus chapter 3 is kind of where he kind of rounds it up, when Paul rounds it up. and goes a little broader, just talking about in general. Hey, this is how you're supposed to be, okay? And this is the kind of life that that is standard to Christians. And we talked about reputation, right, with Paul. And a lot of times we take that for granted. We don't think that it's important, right? We think, oh, because we have the truth, we have the right to just kind of do whatever with it, right? And that's not true. Especially if you read a lot of Paul's writings, Paul will emphasize a lot Christians' reputation in the world or in their communities, right, in their context. And Titus is one of those books that is very heavily emphasized. And you're going to see that again in chapter 3. So why don't we read chapter 3 real quick? Very short. Someone other than Chase Bryce.
I got it.
Amen.
Oh, very good.
Oh, I have to clap.
The whole thing?
I mean, if you want. You know, how about this?
You tell me.
You read to
11.
Sure, 11.
When did you become in charge?
That was the break. I knew he was going to say it. I knew he was going to say verse 1.
Well, I kind of want to break it up to.
Well, it's just 3 more verses. What?
I kind of want to.
No, I'm in charge of it. Let me do this, please. Give me this thing.
All right, fine. You want to read the whole thing?
I'll stop at 11 now.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Okay. Remind them to submit to rulers and authorities, to obey, to be ready for every good work, to slander no one, to avoid fighting, and to be kind, always showing gentleness to all people. For we too were once foolish, disobedient, deceived, enslaved by various passions and pleasures, living in malice and envy, hateful, detesting one another. But when the kindness of God our Savior and his love for mankind appeared, he saves us. He saved us, not by works of righteousness that we had done, but according to his mercy, through the washing of regeneration and renewal by the Holy Spirit. He poured out his Spirit on us abundantly through Jesus Christ our Savior, so that having been justified by his grace, we may become heirs with the hope of eternal life. This saying is trustworthy. I want you to insist on these things, so that those who have believed in God might be careful to devote themselves to good works. These are good and profitable to everyone. But avoid foolish debates, genealogies, quarrels. Is that what that is? No.
Genealogy.
Maybe. Quarrels and disputes about the law, because they are unprofitable and worthless. Reject a divisive person after a first and second warning, for you know that such a person has gone astray and is sinning. He is self-condemned.
Okay, so 2 main things to get out of chapter 3 is in the first few verses, it's just talking about be submissive to rulers and authorities, be obedient, ready for every good work, speak evil of no one, avoid quarreling, be gentle, show perfect courtesy toward all people. For we ourselves were once foolish, disobedient, led astray, slaves to various passions and pleasures, passing our days in malice and envy, hated by others and hating one another. All right, so we have been, and he goes on to talking about how the grace of God has appeared. He's getting that again through Jesus Christ, right, who saved us. Right, so we are no longer under the standard of the world, right? And we talked about how, in this context, Crete, the island of Crete, it's a pretty rough place, right? It's just kind of free for all. People just do whatever they want, right? Whether it be women with prostitution or men with violence and things like that, or vice versa. The audience of these teachings, Titus is the immediate audience, but Titus was he were to go to Crete, right, and to preach to these people and to admonish them and also lead them in the right direction, right, because there was corruption. So they would have been receiving these kinds of teachings too from Titus, right, via Titus from Paul. So it makes sense why Paul is saying these things. Right? You are called to a higher standard, right? When these people are revolting and going against authority, guess what? You're supposed to be submissive and also obedient, not because you let people step all over you, but because you want peace, right? You don't fight, you don't fight the government with violence and things like that. you want to be upstanding citizens so that the gospel is attractive to the people around you, right? Be ready for every good work, right? Don't be lazy, don't be slothful, don't be, don't complain when you have to do things. Be diligent and be upstanding citizens in your context, right? So that you may have good reputation among the community. Speak evil of no one. Don't slander people. Don't lie, right? Crete was a big place for lying, right? Don't speak evil of anyone. Avoid quarreling and be gentle. Show perfect courtesy toward all people. You get the idea, right? This isn't an exhaustive list, but it gives you an idea, a good idea of what kind of person a Christian were to be in their context. Now, it would have been tough. When we're talking about Crete, it's one of the worst places that you could be in terms of living right? Because you have all these influences around you. But nevertheless, Paul calls Titus to teach them to be of that standard, of that higher standard, right? And why is that? Because we were once like that. We were all once lost and led astray, disobedient, all that kind of stuff. But God saved us, right, through Jesus Christ. Right? His glory has been revealed to us, right? And guess what? It wasn't because of our righteousness. He says it right here in verse 4, right? Or verse 5. He saved us not because of works done by us in righteousness, but according to his own mercy, by the washing of regeneration and renewal of the Holy Spirit. Right? That's not to say that we can just do whatever we want because God saved us. Now we can do whatever we want. No. But we are called to a higher standard because we are inspired and motivated by the fact that God loved us so much that he saved us. Right? He went through all that trouble to send his son, right? And Jesus Christ, he gave up himself in order to save us. That shouldn't put us in a place of we can do whatever we want. No, that should motivate us and inspire us to live even better, right? To call to a higher standard. And that is also kind of calling out the Judaizers. Right? People who we talked about how they were Jewish Christians, Jewish people converted into Christianity who went into Crete and other places around Asia Minor, and they were teaching Gentile Christians, right? These new converts that they have to do these things X, Y, and Z. Like you have to be circumcised, you can't eat pork or these unclean food. You got to do this, that, all that kind of stuff. Paul is saying, hey, that's not true. Right? We were saved by Jesus Christ or through Jesus Christ, and that wasn't because of anything that we did or we can do. Right? So he's also hitting that there. The whole justification by faith, not by works. Right? And he talks about that in Romans. Right? But again, there's a balance. It's not just about justification just because you believe. You also have to put in the work, right? That doesn't just go out the window. So Paul's definitely hitting that there. In verse 7, so that being justified by his grace, we might become heirs according to the hope of eternal life. Right? But again, it doesn't stop there. Verse 8, the saying is trustworthy, and I want you to insist on these things so that those who have believed in God may be careful to devote themselves to good works. These things are excellent and profitable for people. Right? Calvinists and denominational brothers in the Christendom would argue using Paul's justification by faith only theology to say things like, oh, hey, when you believe and when you accept Christ into your heart and when you say these other creed things for their specific denomination, guess what? You're saved and you're good, right? You're good. That's not the case. They haven't read all of Romans, because even in Romans, even though Paul says we are justified by faith, he doesn't say So what? I mean, are we to sin because we've been saved by grace? By no means, right? He says, hey, we need to put in work even though grace is involved, right? I mean, look at Titus here. Right? Paul's immediately after saying we have been justified through grace, he's saying, be careful to devote yourselves, right, to good works, because that's also a part of it. We're not saved by good works. Paul says so in Romans 3. But we are called to do good works. We are called to live a good life. Not that we're saved by it, but that is a standard that we are under. Right? And that's in Titus chapter 3. I read somewhere that chapter 3 verses 4 through 7 is kind of like Paul's poem. It's like poetry. It reads like poetry, and he is summarizing the gospel, and I agree with that. It is a very beautiful summary, a terse, a succinct, short summary, but it is very inclusive of the entire gospel. Right? We are saved by God's kindness and love, not by our own actions. Right? We need God to save us. Right? And second, by washing and renewal of rebirth, we are through the Holy Spirit. Right, that's baptism right there, and which the Holy Spirit, it was poured out through Jesus Christ. Right, He opened the door, and He is the way. Right, and 8 through 11, gospel is profitable. Right, and again, Paul is going to mention some fruits of false doctrine. Right, things to look out for. He tells Titus to avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, quarrels about the law, for they are unprofitable and worthless. As for a person who stirs up division, right, after warning him once and then twice, have nothing to do with him, or nothing more to do with him, knowing that such a person is warped and sinful, he is self-condemned. So whenever I think about like controversies, foolish controversies like genealogies, I think about like, you know, there's always like these groups of people who think they can like mathematically figure out the day that Jesus is going to come back, or like the day of the time. Foolish, right? I mean, the Bible literally says not even Jesus himself knows when he's going to come back. It's only God the Father, right? So what makes you think that we're going to be able to figure it? Right? So that kind of stuff. I mean, those things are kind of mostly harmless, but you know, some controversies, they have real effect on people, right? And they can give rise to people and make them teach things that are not true or do things that are not okay. So we need to watch out for those. Like that is, I mean, they have real consequences. Right? Genealogy is talking specifically about, you know, probably targeting Judaizers and Jewish Christians who would argue about, oh, we're better Christians than you because we were the original, you know, citing the Abrahamic lineage, stuff like that. Paul's saying that get that out of you, you know, like Jesus opened the door for everyone, right? Everyone's equal, so that kind of stuff. You know, dissensions, quarrels about law, things like that. You know, how many times have we had like controversies within not in this congregation, but you know, you hear about people breaking up, schisms, and you know, like churches dividing because of like, water fountains or some silly things like that. You know, if the church, or if an argument or a discussion about theology or things like that, or doctrine, results in your church dividing, I don't know if that's worth it. Because that should never be the end result of a discussion, right, of the word.
What's a schism?
It's like a synonym for division.
For what?
Division.
Division.
Yeah.
Oh.
Split. Yeah. So, and I think that's more of something in the past. Like I don't know. I might be wrong. But I've heard of many churches in the past who have split and Some is some of my face.
No.
Y'all keep laughing. Things that happened in the past. I don't think it's as common nowadays.
Sorry, Jesus, chew. Do you need to move over here? Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. But I'm not saying it doesn't happen today. I mean, we have disagreements, things like that. We need to make sure that when we have those disagreements, it's okay to have disagreements, right? It's not wrong to have disagreements. We are human, and we will have our own opinions and things like that. But if our disagreements and our discussion about them result in the church, the body splitting, division, people leaving, it just doesn't sit right with me, right? That should never be the result of any kind of discussion within the body. We are to strive for unity at whatever the cost. And that's not to say we should compromise the truth, but I think there are better ways to do that than just splitting up and starting churches. But again, that's something more of the past, hopefully. But again, I mean, like the theme is there. I mean, we've been talking about this since 1 Timothy. Watch out for these things. If somebody says that they're preaching the truth and all they do is stir up controversies and trouble and quarrels between people and divide the body, then it's obvious that that person is not really preaching the truth or proclaiming the doctrine of Jesus Christ, right? Because, I mean, the famous question, what would Jesus do, right? Like, Jesus would never stir up controversy and seek to divide the body, right? But
at some point, it's saying here that it should happen.
Yes.
If it comes to,
yes,
I guess, be a distraction or
so that's a
take away
good
from
point.
the purpose of what you're there for.
That's a good point. And that should really be the last resort, like literally the last resort that you resort to, is this idea of breaking fellowship, right? Breaking away, or what do you call it? Anyway, not having to do with that person, right? And that is a thing. But that should be the last resort, right? You need to try everything you can in order to keep that unity. And also, thank you for bringing that up. This does not equal to an entire church breaking in half, right? Yeah. So this is talking about those false doctrine or false teachers, people who are stirring up controversy unnecessarily, seeking to destroy the unity that is there in this body, right? Those individuals, we need to be careful. And I mean, what is Titus being called to do by Paul in this letter? Is to go to these churches and call out these false teachers who are teaching these false doctrines and causing trouble, and making sure that the churches do away with them, right? So again, it's a fine balance. There's not a right or wrong. And again, when you disfellowship with somebody, people will get hurt, and maybe they'll take up sides and things like that. Those things are inevitable, but it's something that we should never, it's something that we should try to avoid at all costs, for the sake of unity. Anyway, kind of went off on a tangent. Who wants to read the last few verses? That's not Chase, Bryce, or Maddie. Thank you.
When I sent Artemis and Tychicus to you, do your best to come to me at Neapolis, for I have decided to spend the winter there. Do your best to speed Zenas the lawyer and Apollos on their way. See that they lack nothing. And let our people learn to devote themselves to good works, so as to help cases of urgent need and not be unfruitful. All who are with me send greetings to you. Greet those who love us in the faith. Grace be with you all.
So, I mean, again, some personal instructions, right? But that 14, verse 14, and let our people learn to devote themselves to good works so as to help cases of urgent need and not be unfruitful. Right? So even in these last few words of conclusion, even amongst the personal instructions, Paul does not shy away from this idea of doing good works and being diligent to be fruitful. Right? So I think something that we can take away from all three verses, and we're finished now. Whew. I mean, it took us how long? But these three books, I think something we can take away from them for sure is this idea that the gospel, and I've said this so many times, and I hope it sticks with you, and that's why I'm saying it so many times. The gospel, right, or sound doctrine does not or cannot exist in a vault or in a vacuum, right? A problem a lot of people in the scholarly side of things, right, these theologians and people, who write books and things like that. A problem with a lot of these scholars is that what they do is they get so caught up in the theology of it all, is that they don't worry or they don't put as much emphasis on the other side of it, which is application. And not just application, but how it can affect somebody's life and how it can transform it, right? Because theology is great, understanding God and His nature and all that stuff, awesome. But if we know everything about God, but our life doesn't reflect that at all, then you have known that for naught. That is, right? I mean, there's no point to knowing God and who He is and what He said and what He does and how He works and about His Son, the Spirit, all of these things. There's no point in knowing all of that if that has no effect on our lives, right? So the question always is not, hey, how much are you studying the Bible? That is an important question. How much are you reading and how much you're getting from it? That is an important question, but a question that trumps that, I feel like, is, or at least as equally important as how much you study, is how much is that actually affecting your life? How much is that actually transforming your life into a life that looks like Jesus, that looks like Paul, that looks like Timothy-Titus, all these people that we read about in the Bible, right? So those are some of that's I think the most important thing to get out of 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and Titus, because they are, as we have learned, they are pastoral epistles, right? And they have instructions specifically in leadership, and leading the congregation, and things like that. So when we apply these things to our lives, we can ask the question, hey, how much of our lives look like this? Do I have a good reputation? Not just, socially speaking, but in terms of when we're thinking about looking like Jesus, looking like Christ, do I have a good reputation in my community? Am I living a life that is not slanderous to the name of Jesus? Right? Am I living a life that is exemplary? Is my presence in the church noticeable? Right? Am I just going to Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night, and just calling it a day, right? Or am I, devoting myself to service? Am I devoting myself to study? Am I devoting myself to a life that is reflective of what I know about God and what I've learned in classes like this, right? So those are some questions that we need to ask ourselves, especially as young people, because I don't think we realize we will never not be busy, right? I mean, as life goes on, you will only get busier. That is some funny. That is just the truth. Life will only get busier. So you keep putting things off into the future, saying, hey, maybe, after I'm done with college, I'll really devote myself. Or after I'm done with this, phase of life, I'll really, that is a dangerous mindset. So especially when we're young and when we have relatively more time, not saying that we're not busy, but relatively speaking, we have more time and we have more malleability. We haven't become rigid like some of these older folks, right? Let's ask ourselves, are we really, really shaped as we are called to be shaped, right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of just one of those out of the blue things. That's
Yeah.
what I always do.
Is it about this?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Because last time you asked about the light.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just think it's funny.
So the epistles, are these all the epistles that Paul wrote, or are these just all the ones that he wrote that we have, like, that we have records of?
Yeah, it's all the ones that we have. For example, we know that there are 2 other letters that he wrote to the Corinthian church, that he mentions actually in 1st and 2nd Corinthians, but we just don't have it. Yeah, so some letters, we know it was out there, it wasn't preserved, or we just don't have it. We haven't found it yet, for example.
What if it turns up one day, like in a cave?
They will examine it. They will examine it. I mean, that's what happened with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Right?
Yeah.
And they examined it, and it turned out to be the oldest manuscripts, right? None of the fun fact, none of the books none of the books in the Bible we have an autograph of, which means the very original, right? None of them. But we have thousands and thousands and thousands of manuscripts, which is impressive because if we're comparing to like what's like the most like famous like classical like literature you can think of, like Homer's Odyssey or something like that, right? You would think that those texts would have a lot of manuscripts. You know those ancient texts would have a lot of manuscripts, like copies. They don't. They're at like hundreds at best, and those are like the most famous like secular writings. You compare that to the Bible, like books of the Bible have thousands of manuscripts across like centuries, going all the way back to like early like 2nd, 3rd, 4th century. So like yeah, some things we just don't have.
Yeah.
We know of, but we just don't have.
In terms of like apologetics,
Mhm.
like Christian evidence and things like that, I think that's one of the best arguments against other religions and against atheism is that we have thousands of manuscripts. And it's like you said, if you look at Mormonism, obviously they don't have any because their doctrine was written in 1830s. Like if you compare it to like other ones, they just don't have them. We do.
Exactly. And
What
it's
exactly is a manuscript?
manuscript is basically like a copy. So like before Gutenberg, right, before the printing press, people had to go in and write copies, right? And there were monks and scribes who were dedicated. You remember when they say like scribes and Sadducees and Pharisees and scribes, part of their work was to copy, right? Well, to them, their Bible was the Torah, right, in the Old Testament. So part of their job was not only to study, but also to copy, right? So, I mean, you have those kinds of people, that profession all throughout history, is all they're doing is they're going in a very secluded place, taking a text and copying it, word for word. And you would get a manuscript, like a new manuscript. And we have thousands.
But we don't have an original
We do not have the original.
of any of the books of the Bible.
Any of those. It's just, it would have been too old, like, especially like Old Testament, like, there's no way it would have survived like, thousands of years. And also, in the New Testament, we don't have any autographs. But what we have is manuscripts. And because we have thousands of them, what we can do is we can compare, right? And make our best judgment off of those. So really, the older the manuscript, the better in terms of accuracy because as time goes on, you'll see deviations, human error, things like that, because you're copying by hand, sometimes you'll make errors. But even those are consolidated because you have thousands, hundreds of copies of like one book. So what you can do is you can take those and kind of average it out. So you can kind of pick out, hey, what would have been, there are rules to this, like to looking at transmission, you call it transmission. Translation is, taking from like Greek to English, that's translation. Transmission is copying, right, within a language. So there are rules to that. Like for example, it would have been very, very, very difficult for a scribe to add. It's always easy. It's always the case that scribes add things to a text than to subtract, right? And that can be in the form of like in the margin. Sometimes they'll add like notes or some interpretations, add a few words or something like that because of translation issues, but they never subtract, right? That is like a rule. That and then various reasons for that.
That's all scary to me. Yeah. That's scary.
It is.
Because we don't know what for sure is.
But the good thing is, the good news is, if you think about it, it is impossible for someone to orchestrate over centuries of time of all these different scribes, all these different copiers, all these different people writing, right? If you think about it, those hundreds and thousands of people across centuries, you would think, text would have deviated a lot, but it didn't, right? So there's some peace of mind there. Is that even though we don't have the originals, we have all of these manuscripts that for like 99% of the time, they agree, right? 99% of the text, they all agree. You'll have some deviations. For example, like if you think about like John chapter 7 and 8, the woman, the adulterous woman that Jesus saved from being stoned, that was technically not there in the original, or like in the older manuscripts. That was added on later on, right? So you have things like that, little deviations, but for the most part, it all agrees, and that's a feat that cannot be done by humans, because we're talking about literally hundreds of years, thousands of years, also hundreds of thousands of people, different people, spread across that time, right? So you have that peace of mind there. I don't know how we get on this apologetic Christian evidences.
I'm sorry. I think it's really important to note that a lot of those errors have kind of proven to be a blessing and a curse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially when the King James Bible was first written, there were actually several errors that were made. And none of them were really significant. None of them were like doctrine changing. Like none of them are going to prevent you from salvation. But a lot of the errors were in phrases. Like, it shall come to pass, I think is one of the biggest ones. Yeah. And if you look at, I'm going to use that again, in the Book of Mormon as an example, they included that error in there. So that's another way that in a way, those errors are kind of a blessing, because that's another way that we're able to tell that book is phony.
Yeah, so that's a great example. The old King James Version was based on a lot of manuscripts that were later on, newer manuscripts, and then we got the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? And those are way older, right? Now, again, most of the texts agree, right? Even with the younger manuscripts, right? But there were some things that were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls that, hey, we need to update our translations because now we have an older manuscript and these manuscripts are telling us that some of these need tweaking. So we have new versions, for example, the New King James Version, right? And we have new versions of like ESV, things like that. Those kind of translations are all based on the now updated knowledge that we have through the Dead Sea Scrolls and other archaeological findings. So, yeah. But anyway,
Sorry.
it's a little. No, that's fine. No, that's great.
Better
A
than
little.
the lights.
Huh?
Better than talking about the lights.
I was looking at that though, that is weird.
It is funny. There's like 4 there, 3 there, 3, 4.
David, what are you bringing to the?
Yeah, how's that gonna happen? What's going down with the, is that Thanksgiving, Christmas dinner?
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's just a potluck. It's a Friendsgiving.
It's at Abby Dickerson's house. Her parents are hers.
Hers.
And it's when, Monday or Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
If
what
you
are
go
we
back
supposed
in
to
the group,
bring?
It's all there.
Just bring a side dish or something, because Jeremy's smoking a turkey apparently, and
Jeremy's smoking a turkey.
and Abby's gonna try to cook a ham. Like.
And then people are like bringing mac and cheese and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Is there something I need to bring? I don't know what everybody else is
You
bringing.
should bring something.
But I don't know what everybody else is bringing.
You can bring the drinks since Caleb's not coming tonight.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So I need to bring drinks.
Yeah, bring drinks. Yeah. Because
But maybe tell Caleb to bring it.
Fudge said he's gonna bring drinks, and then he said I'm gonna be there at 8.
Yeah, I'll be there.
It's like, what?
8 too.
There's
Wait,
so much
really?
nonsense text messaging, I can't actually like pick out what I need to read. Last night I was trying to figure out what I needed to bring, and I'd seen Trulies and White Claws, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Don't
just-
bring that.
Yeah, don't.
No, I'm not bringing that, but I was just like,
Yeah, bring drinks. Say like a couple gallons of tea. Maybe
a couple of gallons of tea,
Yeah. What? Those models are cheap.
dehydration.
Oh.
Dehydration and staying up all night.
I mean. That sounds like
It's
a good time to me.
it's probably best if we go to bed and get some good rest. I'm about to just cheat on everyone my phone.
Oh, mine are online, so that's why I don't do it. Not really mine.
Wait, so what?
Don't even act like you never cheated on your files.
What are? Hey, what do you mean?
Remember that camera you cheated on his finals?
Did not cheat on my finals. No. I have had people cheat on Bible tests and quizzes.
I was just talking to Christian about how hard Bible classes are for you. He's like, it's my worst grade.
What is he taking?
I don't know. He's in computer science, but he's like, he's like, I don't have time to try to memorize.
Oh,
them."
yeah, every day.
You got memory verses.
She cheated. All her and her friends all cheated. Like one person did. It was in their Acts class, and the teacher was pretty bad.
Ah.
And
Yeah, that's a
they had
Billy
to
Smith class.
make an outline or something, and so literally like one friend did it, and so they just sent it to all the other ones, and they also did the same thing, and all got hundreds. I think.
Sounds like Acts.
Everybody have a good break?
Happens a lot. Yeah, how was y'all's break?
Amazing.
Did you eat a lot?
No.
You got like, what y'all do?
Maybe.
Everybody your grandparents' house or
Oh,
something?
yeah.
No.
I was pretty much just snacking the whole time. That's how bored I was. I was so bored.
Did you go to your grandparents?
Thanksgiving is the most boring holiday
I love
ever. You literally sit there and everybody's like either asleep on the couch because they've ate themselves in a coma,
That's us.
or everybody's just sitting on their phones.
We're talking about our feelings.
Hey, I got a new game that we.
Oh.
Okay, so I got a
We
game.
adjusted
We
it.
played it at
What?
my grandfather's. Well, it's called. We had to edit it a little bit
Yeah,
because we were
it's
playing with my
very
little brother, and he was like picking them out, and he was like, "I don't think I can say this out loud." So we went through and edited all the cards, so it's now family friendly.
What do you mean?
Yes,
What is
the
it?
TikTok version.
Oh.
The TikTok version?
Yes.
The TikTok version?
I'll bring it there Tuesday.
What do you mean it's so funny? It's so funny.
It was
You
just
know
the
what's
four of us.
funnier?
I didn't think it was that fun. It was also.
Well,
It was 85 degrees in that house when we were
Yes.
playing it, so
It
that was
was so
unfortunate
hot.
too.
what do you mean it's funnier if there's someone in the group that doesn't know how to meme very well? So
We're all
like,
pretty funny. I'm just kidding.
What'd you do, David? What'd you do over the break?
I went to my Chase, like my friend, his Thanksgiving lunch, and then drove back. That was in Edmonton. His family was in Edmonton. And then I drove back and went immediately to the Grice's. I almost threw up.
How many people in her house?
A lot. Ira's family was there. Her family was there. And I was there.
Were you here Wednesday night?
Huh?
Were you here Wednesday night?
Yes.
I don't know.
I participated Wednesday night. There were
Maddie
8
said
people.
nobody was here.
There were 8.
Yeah. Well, I'm teaching over there, so Wednesday nights. What do you mean? Oh, you do you not know?
I wasn't here.
Oh. Well, like I always teach over there. It's the thing.
It's cool. I went to Stacks.
You're welcome.
Wednesday night.
Go ahead, share your name more.
Stacks, have you been there? Frozen yogurt.
Oh yeah. I saw
Jason,
that.
where were you Friday?
Where was that Friday night?
You left your shoes with us.
Goodbye.
Yeah, I don't give a shit. I just had
Hey, you play Halo?
I haven't played it yet. I'm going to. Is it good?
I'm like